Alright guys, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about the legitimacy of the judicial branch. Join me, won't you? So in the last video, we talked about the Supreme Court's power of judicial review, and this allows the court to rule laws unconstitutional. Judicial review is in fact the very basis of the power of the Supreme Court to make policy. Any time that the court overrules or overturns a congressional law or a state law or an executive action, the court in fact is making policy. Now this can be quite controversial because remember, judges are not elected. Rather, they are appointed. The president nominates federal judges and the Senate confirms them. So this can lead to controversy because some people feel like these unelected judges are making policy. So sometimes they might criticize this as legislating from the bench. That might be an expression that you would hear from time to time. Typically, this is by somebody who doesn't like the ruling that the Supreme Court has made on a particular issue. And they're pointing out the fact that when the court rules something unconstitutional, it is making a very important policy decision despite the fact that they don't have legislative powers and despite the fact that they are not elected. Now, typically, the Supreme Court does not overrule itself, and it very often does not overrule the other branches. We're going to talk about that in the next couple of videos, so stick with me for that. But for right now, I want to talk about precedent. And this is the idea that once the Supreme Court has ruled on an issue, in the future, it will typically rule the same way. Very often, they won't even hear cases on that issue once the court has made a decision because they're going to simply let the decision stand. And in fact, that term, let the decision stand, that's stare decisis. Stare decisis is a Latin term which literally means let the decision stand. The idea here is that the court should follow precedent. Now, it's important to note that this is a guiding principle of the Supreme Court, but it is not a requirement. Supreme Court justices do not have to follow precedent. They are under no obligation to do so. If they believe that the court made a mistake in the past, they absolutely can and are free to rule differently in the future. So because the Supreme Court has the power to overturn past rulings, that makes the decision about who to put onto the Supreme Court a hugely important decision. Remember, it's not just that they get this job for a little while, but they have this job for life. So this is truly one of the longest lasting impacts that a president has, is in who he decides to place on the Supreme Court. Now remember, he doesn't do this by himself. The president nominates a Supreme Court justice, but the Senate has to confirm that person. So this often leads to a lot of tension between the president and the Senate because of the importance attached to this. In fact, this decision is so important because once a new justice is placed on the court, this can lead to previous decisions or past precedents being overturned and new precedents taking their place. With this in mind, many justices have decided to time their retirement when there is a president from their same party in office. The idea here is pretty simple, that they would prefer to be replaced by somebody who will be similar to them ideologically. So if we have a liberal getting replaced by a conservative, that justice wouldn't be happy because they know many of their rulings would be overturned or done away with. In fact, this happened in the early 90s, where Thurgood Marshall was very, very sick and had to retire. When he retired, there was a Republican president, George H.W. Bush, and he replaced Thurgood Marshall, who was a very liberal justice, with Clarence Thomas, who is the most conservative justice currently on the Supreme Court. This led to a major shift in the court's rulings. More recently, we see that shift happen again, although this one's a little bit smaller. When Justice Kennedy retired, he was kind of the moderate on the court. He was conservative, but he wasn't overly conservative. But he has been replaced by Justice Kavanaugh, who is as well one of the more conservative members of the court. So we see a shift in the court's ideology and a shift in the rulings of the Supreme Court. Again, highlighting the huge importance of this decision. Alright, that's it for this video. You already know it. This has been a LaMoney production. Alright, thanks everybody for watching. If this video helped, do me a favor and hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure that you do that. I'll see you guys next time.